You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. You probably heard the news on Monday that Derrick Williams committed to Texas. If you don't know who Derrick Williams is, he's a 5-star safety out of Westgate. So it's a guy from the Lafayette area, from Acadiana area, who is one of the top players in Louisiana for this recruiting cycle, and he is not going to be staying home. He's committed to Texas now, and he sort of follows this Arch Manning parade to Austin. We talked about it, but Arch Manning, of course, is committed to Texas. He did so on Thursday. Since Arch Manning committed, Texas has gotten 7 commitments. I mean, he has been the Pied Piper. Even Williams said, I knew Manning was likely going there, but I was just making sure that impacted my decision going to Texas. Of course it did. He's been sort of a Pied Piper of sorts, and when Arch pledged to Texas, a lot of other guys decided, all right, well, I'll jump in the boat too. Well, it's Derrick Williams, for what it's worth, is the third best in the 247 composite. He's the third best player in the state of Louisiana. Arch Manning, number 1, Shelton Sampson, number 2, and then Derrick Williams, number 3. Eli Holstein, the quarterback out of Zachary, who's committed to Bama, he's number 4. I was asked this morning if Brian Kelly was having trouble recruiting Louisiana. And I think it's a fair question. It's a fair question. I don't necessarily think the answer is yes. I'll get to it in a second, but I think it's a fair question. Considering everything people said, Northeast guy, spent his career in the Midwest, comes down to Louisiana, and he's got to learn the SEC and develop relationships and all that stuff. That's fair. It's a very fair question to ask. But a couple of things. Number one, Brian Kelly, during his time at Notre Dame, has had recruiting wins not only in the South, but in Louisiana. From Jerry Tillery in North Louisiana to Logan Diggs in New Orleans. Brian Kelly had, and those are both guys that LSU wanted, that he came down here and got to South Bend. He's recruited Texas and Florida, and you have to. When you're at Notre Dame, you have to recruit nationally. So he has had recruiting wins. On top of that, he intentionally added guys to the staff with ties here, like Frank Wilson and like Joe Sloan. Very intentional about the way he went about building his staff, kind of dividing between guys that know him really well and that he knows well and guys that know this area really well. I think it was very self-aware. So no, I don't necessarily think that's the issue. I think very obviously NIL is something where LSU is getting its tail kicked. If you're an LSU fan and you can't acknowledge that, you're just being naive. If you talk to anyone who covers recruiting at any level, from recruiting people at any of the recruiting services, to scouts, to high school coaches, to players and parents of players and coaches at other colleges, they'll all tell you the same thing. Boosters, that LSU is getting its behind kicked in NIL. And it's obvious. We've talked about it a ton. It's not, in my opinion, just very quickly, it's going to take what just happened in baseball for LSU's money boosters to really get motivated to get going. LSU just watched Mississippi State and Ole Miss in back-to-back years win their program's first national title and said, enough of this. Let's go. What do we need to do? That's what galvanized them. You can't rest on your laurels. And maybe the same thing's going to happen in LSU football. The program's going to have to regress enough, and you're going to have to watch A&M go win recruiting battles and become a top 10 team and to say, okay, enough. What do we need to do? And maybe that's it, but we'll see. I'll also say that in 2022, in a compressed time, right? They got 5 of the top 12 players in Louisiana, including guys like Will Campbell and Walker Howard and Emory Jones. And then you lost some guys who wanted to come to LSU specifically because of NIL, and one of them is Jacoby Matthews, who we've talked about a lot here. I went through that whole offer sheet situation. Kid wanted to go to LSU. A&M threw the A&M collective threw a ton of cash at him that he couldn't turn away from. So you lost a 5-star safety that wanted to be here because of NIL, and that's a very real situation. But if I look ahead to 2023, and I think context matters. It always matters. If you look at the top recruits in Louisiana for 2023, Arch Manning is the number one player in the country, and of course the number one player in Louisiana, and he's going to Texas. But you were never getting Arch Manning. As much as I and others try to tell you and let you down gently over the years, although I didn't try to let you down gently, I was very blunt, that Arch Manning was never coming here. You air quote, lost Arch Manning, but you never had Arch Manning. You were never getting him. So forget about that. The number 2 player in the state for this coming year is Shelton Sampson. And Shelton Sampson is considered a heavy LSU lean. That's a 5-star receiver out of Cali High who's thought to be an LSU lean, if not lock. If you look at Crystal Ball predictions on 247 Sports, 100% of them have him going to LSU. Derrick Williams, we just talked about, out of Westgate. It was a Texas-Alabama battle for Derrick Williams. He wasn't coming here anyway. Eli Holstein was never coming here. That's the 4th best player in the state. Now, Jade Nosberry is one where you start to get to it and you say, Jade Nosberry's a legacy. His dad has worked at played for LSU, has worked in LSU athletic administration for a long time. That's a 5-star linebacker on your campus. You need to find a way to get in the mix and get that kid. The 6th best player in the state is Lance Hurd, who a lot of people seem, especially after this camp, to think he might be leaning toward LSU. Anyway, you go on, and we'll see how the rest of this class plays out. But some of the questions, I think, are valid. But I think we have to reiterate a couple things. Number one, you got to recalibrate your thinking on recruiting because of the portal and because of NIL. You're going to lose or miss out on kids that you normally would hit because of NIL. There are players that you would normally get that other schools are going to be able to pay more, and you're just going to miss out on those guys. And that's unfortunate, but it's part of the reality. But the flip side of it is the transfer portal allows you to make good. If you miss out on a kid in February or November, the early signing period, you can make up on the back end with the portal. I'll give you an example. I just mentioned Jacoby Matthews. It's a 5-star safety from Ponchatoula. You would have loved to have had him in this class. You didn't get him. You needed safety help, so what did you do? You went to Arkansas, and you had Joe Fouché and Greg Brooks. Let me ask you a question. For 2022, one season only, who would you rather have on your roster? Freshman Jacoby Matthews or 2 senior captains with 4 years of SEC experience in Brooks and Fouché? Matthews is the better pro prospect. Matthews probably has the better college career over 3 years in College Station. This year, who's better? Give me the dudes with a ton of experience. So you can make good on the back end with the portal. Now, I will say this, and this is the flip side of it, which is part of the part of being self-aware. Okay, where if you're an LSU fan, you have to be willing, and not just fans, but if you're the coaches, you have to be willing and be aware of this as well. Camp season just came and went, and LSU has a handful of commitments. You had 6 commitments. 6 commitments after your elite camp season. I mean, if you're listening around the SEC, I'm running through every school. Boom, boom, commit. It's all it is right now. You have camp season, summers, and guys are committing. LSU's got 6. The highest rated is a 4-star tight end out of St. Louis. Of your 6 commits, Trey Holly, the running back from Farmerville, who's a 4-star, he's your only commit from Louisiana. So it's fair to ask the question and to wonder what's going on there. And of the players I just mentioned, of the 6 commits, 1 is a top 150 guy. That's the tight end Mac Markway, who's number 147 in the country. None are in the top 100 nationally. It's a slow start to this class. I'm not panicking, but it is a slow start to the class. And I've pointed out, look, Bama's only sitting on 7 commits right now. It ain't like they're light years ahead, but of the 7 commits that Alabama has right now, 5 are in the top 150. And they're favored, air quotes, to land a dozen more guys in the top 150. The only one LSU's favored right now to get is Shelton Sampson. So I'm not going to panic about a recruiting class on June the 28th. Please don't misunderstand me. But at the same time, you have to be willing to look with a critical eye and say, is it fair to think they should be further along in this class right now? They should be in the mix with more top guys, not only nationally, but in the state of Louisiana? And the answer to that is yes. And that just means that they got a lot of work to do between now and the November signing period to get this class on track. Because if they don't, then you become a program that continues to be beholden to the transfer portal. And my opinion is you can't win a national championship building your roster through the portal. You win a national championship by having great signing classes and supplementing through the portal at spots where you're weak or where you miss. But if you think you're going to add half of your class every year via the portal, then you're never building a consistent culture within your program and developing guys in the way that you want them consistently. So, not freaking out. Not freaking out that you had a 5-star safety, Derrick Williams, commit to Texas. It stinks. But there's going to be other 5-stars and other great safeties. Evaluate them, get them on campus. But you are also right to ask the question if this recruiting class should be further along than it is right now. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.